I was reading this book this morning. It's called Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by Dr. David Hawkins. And I got to the chapter called Apathy and Depression. Wow. Okay, you had me at apathy. Apathy and depression, not really super feel-good subjects, and yet I'm guessing a lot of us are feeling it or have felt it or will feel it. And he writes specifically in here about blame. And I'm not sure that many of us can connect the dots between blame and apathy and depression. But I understand, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it's extremely important and very powerful for us to realize. He kind of lays out the steps of how to relinquish blame. And he says in the book, and it's such a good point, it doesn't matter the right and wrong. It's taking responsibility for your consciousness. You know, if Viktor Frankl can forgive the Nazis for putting him in Auschwitz, there's no justification to blame, is what I'm saying. And that's very counterculture. It's very counter zeitgeist of today, where everybody sues everybody, and the cruelty of the internet, focusing on who did what and how terrible they are, and it's like a sickness. It really is. And so this kind of flies in the face of a lot of the wisdom of the world, and that's why so many of us are apathetic and depressed. So he says, to acknowledge the payoffs we've been getting from the negative feelings. So if we were abused as a child, then, and this was my story, I was a helpless victim. I was an innocent little girl. I was molested. I was hurt. And the world gives you a lot of, and I hate pity, but even within your own mind, and a lot of it is unconscious, it weakens you. It's like you become helpless. I can't do anything about it. I'm a victim. And so when you decide, one of the first things he says you have to do is to realize that you're choosing to blame. It's actually a decision you're making. And it's not that you can't stop blaming, it's that you won't. And if you don't want to stop blaming, it's more empowering to be conscious and aware and say, I'm going to blame and I'm not going to stop, rather than I can't stop. I mean, you're still going to be suffering the negative vibes of blame, but at least you're not helpless about it, you know. He talks in here about anger, and I've actually experienced this many times in my own life, where anger actually had pulled me out of the deep depths of depression. Once I remember I got really angry and fought with my husband over like nothing. But I remember I literally felt an energetic shift, like, because anger is energy, is action, is power. So when he writes in this chapter about apathy and depression, when he writes about blame, he's trying to teach us that the payoff of blame is to keep us stuck. And that as long as we're blaming someone else, we're not taking responsibility for our own consciousness, our own energy, our own mood, our own life. So the second step, the first step is to acknowledge the benefits you've been getting. And I'm going to have to give up my identity as a victim. Okay. And some of us, after decades of living that identity, are more than ready to let it go, because it sucks. It's a sucky identity. So the second step is to surrender each component. So I surrender, the aspect that people are going to give me a lot of love and attention for this issue. I'm surrendering that I have to take, I'm surrendering my powerlessness, because, it's not always fun to grow up and be strong and take responsibility for yourself. Sometimes it's easier to just say, well, I can't be happy because I can't, just because. So it's letting go. It's surrendering all the different components of that, of the payoffs of the blame and the negative feelings. The third is very powerful. Letting go of all resistance to the power and the healing and the love within you. So I like how he delineates that it's two steps. You surrender the components, the negative aspects, and then you surrender your resistance to the positive. And then the fourth step is to look within ourselves and to inquire. If we're blaming, if we're angry, if we're victims, it's not that we're wrong or bad, it's that we're hurt, right? We're hurt. There's a part of us that desperately needs love, attention, healing, compassion, grace, tenderness. So what is this anger covering up? What is underneath this anger? And oftentimes it's feelings of fear or jealousy or competitiveness, inadequacy, unworthiness, all of those things. So when we realize that we're blaming, we can decide to stop doing that, no matter who did what, when, why. It doesn't matter the right and wrong of it. The issue is, are we willing to take responsibility for our own consciousness? And when we do, here's the good news. I love what he writes here. I highly recommend this book. It's very practical and super empowering. He says, when we connect with the higher self, there's a lot of different names for that. The higher self, the Christ within, the Buddha nature, the God self. When we connect with that, we realize there's an inner reality that we can term our inner greatness, our higher self. Some people call it the quantum field. Whatever you call it, it's all the same, and we all have access to it, no matter what religion or no matter what. It's more like an electromagnetic field than it is a personal dogmatic religious belief. It is just, it's more like science, actually. And I like what I'm seeing these days with Dr. Joe Dispenza and other teachers, that science and religion are finally coming together, thank God. There's an inner reality that we can term our inner greatness or our higher self, capital S. It has much more power than the inner negativity. In return for letting go of the payoffs that we were getting from the negative position, we are now surprised by the positive payoffs that stem from the power of positive feelings. For example, when we let go of blame, we experience forgiveness. So I wanted to share this with you because I've experienced it in my own life many, many times, and I keep experiencing it. When we acknowledge the negativity, the blame, the anger, the fear, whatever it is, and we process it. For me, I love to journal, or I talk to friends. Get it out. Let it go. Decide to surrender it. I like the image that Marianne Williamson taught us in our coaching group, is that there's an altar, right? And you put it upon the altar, whatever it is, your pain, your anger, your fear. And what you put upon the altar will be altered, changed. And Jesus says in the Course, I cannot take from you what you do not give to me. So it's in agreement with what Dr. Hawkin says, is that we have to choose to not blame. We have to choose to stop blaming. We have to choose to take responsibility. So we acknowledge that we're in blame mode. We surrender that, and then we surrender and let go of our resistance to the positivity and the love and the miraculous healing forces that are all around us. And then we can inquire what Dr. Gabor Mate says. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, and I'm Hungarian. I should know how you say his name. Gabor Mate. I love him. And he has this compassionate inquiry he does for healing trauma. And we all need to do that. We all experience trauma. If big T, little t, trauma, it's just traumatic to be human, right? It's traumatic to be alive. I was just in New York City for a while, and poof, you can just feel the trauma. Sorry, New Yorkers, but it's like an aggressive place. Happy to be back in LA. I love New York, but oof, I didn't mean to get off topic there. So acknowledge if you're blaming, decide to stop it, Just stop it. Let it go. And surrendering isn't like, oh, I give up, like a weak thing. Surrendering is a powerful decision that you decide of my own free will and my powerful intention. I intend to surrender this shit that has been fucking up my life for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? Some people go to their grave blaming their dad, blaming their mom, blaming life, whatever it is. You can decide right here, right now, to stop it and to take care of yourself and to see what's underneath the blame. Blame is fucking lame. It keeps you powerless and stuck. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the person who hurt you or the situation wasn't terrible. When you decide to stop blaming, it doesn't mean that the person who did you wrong isn't culpable and responsible and needs to be held accountable, sometimes needs to go to jail for what they did. That is a separate issue. The issue that I'm speaking about and that Dr. Hawkins is writing about is your own heart and mind, your own inner well-being, your own consciousness. You and only you are responsible for every thought you think. And that is going to affect every emotion and every feeling, which will lead to either apathy and depression or joy and bliss. You have the power. You really, literally do. Use your power well, fellow humans. Don't be a blamer. Take good care of your mind, of your heart, of your body. It's yours to love, to heal, to cherish. And don't blame yourself. If you're a blamer, you're a blamer. Welcome to the human race. Just stop blaming. You know, I love what he says in this book, and I've often said it because I have a close friend who is, every time something happens, who did this? Whose fault is it? It drives me crazy. Nothing has to be anyone's fault. What a concept. It's not about right or wrong. It's about deciding how to perceive the situation. It's about deciding to align with the positivity and the optimism and mostly the love and the compassion. Forgiveness in the way that empowers you and heals you. You're not a victim. None of us are victims unless we decide we are, unless we allow ourselves to be that. And I say that with deep, deep sensitivity and compassion. I do not say that flippantly. I know that this is a difficult process for many of us, and it took me many decades to get to this point. But I pray for you that you can get here sooner. The sooner you stop blaming, the sooner you will be happy. Take good care.